Let's be honest, whether you're a cyclist or a driver, you know that moment. A car pulls up to pass a bike, and for just a split second, everything depends on that empty space between them. But how much space is actually enough? And what really makes that pass a safe one? Well, a team of researchers decided to get to the bottom of it, and what they found is pretty fascinating.
So let's start with that question. When a car passes a bike, how much is enough room? Is it 3 feet, 5 feet, or is it just a feeling? This isn't just some academic question, you know. It's a real-world scenario that plays out thousands of times a day on our streets, and getting the answer wrong can have life-or-death consequences.
And that's where things can get really serious. Which brings us to our first section, the dangerous squeeze. Because when that space isn't enough, those consequences become a tragic reality all too often. Just take a look at this number, 840. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, that's how many bicyclists were killed in traffic crashes in 2016 alone. And that number was actually on the rise. So this is not a small problem. It's a major public safety issue.
So you have to wonder, what's the most common cause of these fatal crashes? Well, research going back decades points right to this exact scenario. A driver simply misjudging the space they need to pass a cyclist. It's that simple, and it's that deadly. A tiny miscalculation, a small drift of the wheel, and that squeeze becomes a catastrophe. To really get a handle on this problem, researchers had to measure it with pinpoint accuracy. On the right, you see what a regular camera sees, a truck passing, and it looks pretty close. But on the left, that's the cool part. That's the view from a LiDAR sensor. It's basically a laser system that creates a 3D map of everything around it, measuring the exact distance. This is how science makes an invisible risk visible.
Okay, so if the problem is drivers misjudging space, the solution seems kind of obvious, right? Just tell them how much space to give. That leads us right into our next section, the 3-foot question. Can we actually legislate our way to safety?
And that's exactly where these safe passing laws come into play. The concept is super simple. Make it a rule that drivers have to leave a specific minimum distance when they pass a cyclist. And the most common standard you'll see across the US is 3 feet.
But, and this is a big but, here's where it gets messy. This map from 2017 shows that the laws are a total patchwork. Some states say 3 feet, Pennsylvania says 4, and others just have this vague rule about leaving a safe distance. There's absolutely no consistency across the country.
Which brings us to the multi-million-dollar question, right? Do any of these laws actually work? Does putting a number on the books, 3 feet, 5 feet, whatever, genuinely make drivers give cyclists more breathing room out there on the road?
To figure that out, you can't just send out a survey. You need real, hard data from the real world. And that's how we get to this incredible piece of research, the rolling experiment.
Now, the setup for this was really clever. They picked 4 similar cities to compare. 2 of them in Michigan had local 5-foot passing laws. Then you have South Bend, Indiana, with a 3-foot law. And finally, Lansing, Michigan, which at the time had no specific passing law at all. It was the perfect natural experiment.
And this was their secret weapon. Forget a simple GoPro strap to a helmet. This is basically a rolling research lab. It looks like a normal bike, sure, but it's packed with technology. That box on the back has the LiDAR system we saw earlier, plus a bunch of other sensors and cameras. This spy bike was designed to capture exactly how drivers behave.
So, here's how it all went down. First, an experienced cyclist took this spy bike out for a ride on similar types of roads in all 4 cities. While they were riding, those sensors were working overtime, capturing the exact passing distance of more than 3,000 cars. Then, the research team took all that data and crunched the numbers to see what really makes a difference.
All right, so the experiment is done, the data is in. So what did they find out? Let's get to the good stuff in our next section, what the data revealed.
And here it is, the first huge finding. This chart lays it out pretty clearly. It shows the average passing distance in each type of city, and the difference is significant. The data showed that drivers in the cities with a 5-foot law gave way more space than in the city with a 3-foot law or the one with no law at all. So it seems the law itself really does matter.
But hold on, the law wasn't the whole story. Not by a long shot. The actual design of the road had a massive impact. It turns out, when drivers had more physical space to move over, like on roads with paved shoulders or wide lanes, they used it. But they passed closer on roads with those painted sharrows, and when more trucks were around. Infrastructure really, really matters.
Okay,
But this all kind of hinges on one big assumption, doesn't it? For a law to work, people have to actually know it exists. So, do the drivers in these cities even know what the local passing law is?
Well, here's the real shocker. The researchers also surveyed about 600 drivers. And yeah, most people had no clue. Just look at this chart. In every single city, the biggest slice of the pie was drivers who were simply unsure about the law. For example, in South Bend, where there's a 3-foot law, over half the drivers were completely uninformed. A law can't be very effective as nobody knows it's there.
And this is where it gets really interesting from a psychological standpoint. The survey also found that drivers almost always think they're giving more space than they actually are. So you could have a driver who genuinely believes they're being safe and giving 5 feet, when the LiDAR on that spy bike shows it was really more like 3.5. Our perception from behind the wheel can be pretty flawed.
So let's try to pull all this together. Laws seem to help a bit, but road design also helps a lot, and most drivers don't even know the law in the first place. So, what are we supposed to do with all that? Let's try to make sense of it in our final section, Beyond the Law.
So, what's the bottom line here? Let's break down the key takeaways. First, laws do seem to help, and this study suggests a 5-foot law is more effective than a 3-foot one. Second, road design is absolutely crucial. You can't just pass a law and expect it to work on a narrow road with no shoulder. Third, awareness is the huge missing link. A law that no one knows about is just words on paper. And finally, it all means that laws aren't some silver bullet. They're just one piece of a much, much bigger safety puzzle.
Which leaves us with this one big thought to chew on. We've seen that making roads safer takes more than just a rulebook. It takes smart engineering, it takes public education, and it probably takes a fundamental shift in how we perceive the space around us. So what does it really take to share the road safely? Maybe the answer isn't just a number of feet, but a shared understanding that the space between us is what keeps every single one of us safe.